My mom always told me that my dad was a sailor, lost at sea. She kept an old faded photograph of a man in a Navy uniform, smiling, confident, a man I only knew through the stories she told. She'd say he sent postcards from far-off places, describing oceans that stretched forever and skies that burned orange at sunset. But I never saw those postcards. Still, I never questioned her. Why would I? She was my mother, and I trusted her completely. I grew up in a small but warm apartment, just the two of us. My mom worked long hours, always coming home exhausted, but she never complained. I did my best to help, cooking when I could, making sure my grades were good, staying out of trouble. I wanted to make her proud, to lighten her burden in any way possible. Then everything changed. One afternoon at work, a man walked into my office, tall, maybe in his late 40s, with sharp but kind eyes. He introduced himself as Robert. At first, the name meant nothing to me. But then I noticed something. His eyes, his face. There was something familiar about him, something I couldn't place. My pulse quickened. He told me he had been looking for me for years, that he knew my mother, that he was my father. I felt the floor shift beneath me. He laid out documents, birth certificates, old photos. There was my mom, young, full of life, smiling at this man like he was her entire world. My world started to break apart. I asked him about the sailor story, about the postcards. He shook his head. He said my mother had made it all up, to protect me, to protect herself. He admitted that they had fought, that things had fallen apart between them before I was born. He had left, not lost at sea, just lost to us. I didn't know what to think. I felt anger, betrayal, confusion. My mother had lied to me my entire life, but at the same time, she had been there every single day, raising me, sacrificing for me. Could I really hate her for that? That night, I went to see her. She was already waiting, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She knew. Before I even said a word, she whispered, "I'm sorry." And just like that, all the anger I had been holding onto started to crack. She told me the truth, how she had been scared, how she didn't want me to grow up knowing that my father had chosen to leave. She thought she was doing the right thing. Maybe in a way she was. It took time to process everything. I didn't forgive her overnight. And as for Robert, it was complicated. He wasn't the father I had imagined, but he was real. And for the first time in my life, I had the chance to know him. In the end, I didn't lose my mother. I didn't lose the love we had. Instead, I gained something else. A truth that, while painful, was still mine to hold.